All right, so I'm here with my man Marcus, and we're talking about the benefits of the revolver. I've got the Kimber K6xs, and you know, I'm a big fan of revolvers, but what I was talking about with Marcus, I apologize if I'm yelling, my ears are plugged up and we're inside the actual range right now. But what I was talking about is that one of the beautiful things of the Kimber series, the XS and the XS and the K6s. Okay, yeah, there's a K6s and the K6xs. Some of the benefits of one of the major benefits of both of these guns is that there's a defensive wall where you can stage it and basically get it to a point where when you're pulling the trigger, you're in single action. The problem is that there's a huge difference between how reliable that is on the K6s versus the K6xs. So my thought process was, is it possible to actually stage that trigger wall in a defensive situation? So if I were to draw from holster on a shot timer and then place those 6 rounds, would I be able to find that wall? And if you look at my target over here, clearly I was not able to do that. On the K6xs, you actually pull through. So I just had Marcus kind of dry fire. What were your thoughts in terms of when you were dry firing that?
So when I was dry firing this, immediately one of the things that I noticed was just the weight of the trigger. Having to pull this one single time, so staging it so that the cylinder would turn to get it to single action, and then pulling through that in order for it to get to fire, the exact same weight necessary to do that is basically like 2 trigger pulls for this SIG XMACRO. So essentially what I'm saying is you can get 2 rounds off that you can control right from prep to wall to break twice before you can get 1 round off with this.
Right.
And in any speed, I mean, essentially you end up with what looks like a shotgun blast as opposed to something that's a little bit more precise.
So let me ask you this. If you were shooting the SIG in that same situation, draw from holster, you know, on a shot timer, so we're simulating a defensive situation, do you feel like you would be able to find that wall on the SIG on that first shot, or are you going to be pulling through that first shot and then finding the reset, and then from there being able to control each press of that trigger in a defensive situation?
Well, I'll say this. Worst case scenario in a real defensive situation, I think in either one of these cases, you're probably pulling through, right? It's a 0 or 100 some thing. So if you're going to be firing, if you're actually going to be defending yourself with your firearm, you're probably going to pull through. But if I was in a situation where I had just a second to think about it, just the mechanism of what a semi-automatic firearm is set up to do allows you to find the wall more easily and more reliably than this.
Okay.
So it's going to allow me over and over again to be able to find the wall here as opposed to potentially being able to pull through it there. Because you have to be so fine, but with so much power at the same time to get this to work, as opposed to being able to just be fine with this.
Is that a benefit or a hindrance though? Because if you're using less power to break through that wall on the semi-auto in a self-defense situation, is that putting you, is your liability rising in terms of that as opposed to the harder pull, the more difficult length of pull on the revolver?
So I would say absolutely yes. The revolver would be something that where I would say to a person, hey, listen, if you happen to be working someplace or you live someplace where you're in constant encounters with people who may want to do you harm, and you would like to have some version of a show of force. Now, I'm not saying this, but if you actually had to put yourself in a situation where you did have to, there is a greater chance that with this revolver, you could actually stop yourself. But again, I'm not of that philosophy. I feel like you either absolutely need help or you absolutely do not.
It's on or off.
Right, so it's either 0 or it's 100. And so if I'm going to be shooting, what I do know about that is that I'm responsible for every single round that comes out of my firearm. And so in a situation where my adrenaline is spiked, my fear is probably through the roof, my decision making may not be as clear. If I'm going to squeeze twice, I absolutely have to be and feel that I know where every single one of these rounds is going to go. And I can't say, because I have not had enough time with this revolver, that I will be willing to bet my future on hitting 3 or 4 with this, but I would with this.
Okay.
And that's just where I am.
All right, let's put it to the test. All right, so we're gonna put this to the test, guys, and we're gonna see just kind of where we're at. Now, Marcus doesn't have his draw from holster certification here, so he's gonna be coming off the table. And what we'll do is we'll use a shot timer, and he'll pick the gun up and he'll go 6 shots. He'll call out his zone, so either like right shoulder area, you know, left shoulder area, whatever you wanna do. And we'll look for his 6 shots, and then I'll do the same with the revolver from holster. Sound good? Yeah. So we're using the SIG 365 XL, right?
XMACRO.
XMACRO, 365 XMACRO, and we're going 6 shots. What zone are you going for?
So I'm gonna go in the upper chest area.
Upper chest area, center.
Yeah, like sternum.
Okay, center mass, upper chest area, 6 shots, and yeah, I'll hit a shot timer whenever you're locked and ready. Shoot it.
Ready.
Great shots. Beautiful.
And to be honest, that was a little bit, it took me a little longer to find the dot that I'd like.
So your shots were 4, 3, 2, and that was 6 shots. Perfect grouping, very nice. So I'm going to be going with the Kimber K6xs, all right? And we're going 6 shots, center mass. I feel so much pressure.
You got this, man.
I definitely winged one.
You missed one.
Yep. 5, 8, 7.
So there you go, folks.
So what are your thoughts on that in terms of the placement of the shots, in terms of the extra second that it took? What do you think about that?
So as you can see on the target, you kind of walked them up, but once you got where you needed to be, you were able to get your rounds in.
Yeah.
The issue for me, I think, is one of what a dot does for you. First off, it is kind of a cheat code. It does help with shooting. And then the other part is, I think for you, you are thinking about staging that trigger to make sure that that first shot, because that's the most important shot, right? If you miss the first one and they close that distance, nothing else matters.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you miss that one, then, you know, you're kind of in a hope and wish type of a situation. And it seems like, for me, what a revolver would bring to you as far as like concealability, maybe cost, some of the other things might be lost in like real effectiveness.
Yeah, I think that it's like a Venn diagram, right? Like your situational awareness, if you're going to choose to go this route, your situational awareness, where you are, what you're willing to get involved in would have to increase.
Yes, absolutely.
And maybe putting yourself in a situation where only if you're within 10 feet.
Right.
You know, like this is 15 feet. Maybe I'm not shooting at 15 or further. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I'm going to add one small piece, which is the piece that I'm the most worried about in any kind of defensive situation. I think that I will be able to justify just about anything I do because, again, I do the 0 or 100 thing. This first round is gone. Your first shot is somewhere else. You know, it's not on the target, and he's going to have to account for it.
Absolutely.
So just that's something to think about.